Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. Manage your blood glucose levels, increase your possibilities by Gvoke HypoPen, the first pre-mixed auto-injector for very low blood sugar, and by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
This week, catching up with Beta Bionics. Their fully automated bionic pancreas called the iLet has some new features not available in existing devices, and that's hoped to ease the burden of diabetes in new ways.
Working for companies like Beta Bionics give us the opportunity to reach a much wider group of people and really gives us the opportunity, because we are a public benefit company, to try and engage those people that aren't being engaged currently with the tools that are available.
That's Kate Farnsworth, a well-known name from the DIY community, now with Beta Bionics. She'll give us the latest news on the iLet's development and share some personal stories of her family's journey with Type 1. Also this week, a big anniversary for the show, as well as for some of our listeners. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. Always so glad to have you along. We aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. Guys, it has been 6 years of Diabetes Connections. This month marks 6 years. I started in June of 2015. It kind of snuck up on me, to be honest with you. I had started the show in May of 2015, actually, but it was just audio that I had put on my blog. We didn't get accepted into Apple Podcasts and all the rest until June. So that's where I'm marking it from. I had been working on it for months and months, and I kind of wish I'd started it earlier. But hey, I'm thrilled with how it's gone. Almost 400 episodes now. So many of you wonderful listeners who I hear from all the time. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And if you could just do me a favor, the best thing you could do, I'm not doing much to celebrate this anniversary. I'm not doing a big thing on social or anything like that. But if you could do me a favor, just share the show, share this episode, share whatever episode you like, or just share a link to diabetes-connections.com on your social media. You can put it on your own timeline. Better yet, share it in a diabetes Facebook group. It really does help get the word out. You can leave a review. That's always fun. But sharing the show itself or telling somebody about it, showing them even to this day how to listen to a podcast really goes a long way. So will we be here for another 6 years? I don't know. Man, I hope so. I'm not slowing down. I'm really excited about where we're going, and I love talking to people like my guest this week. All right, let's get into it. My guest is Kate Farnsworth. She's a consultant for Beta Bionics, currently acting as digital marketing and communications manager. Many of you know Kate from the DIY community. Her daughter was diagnosed at age 8, and we actually first spoke. She was on the podcast in July of 2015, just after we got started. We talked then about Nightscout. She helped so many people get watch faces set up back in the day, among so many other things that she did. Now she helps run the Facebook Looped group with tens of thousands of members. Now the iLet, as many of you know, has been one of the most heavily watched and anticipated devices in the diabetes space. First human testing was done in 2008. Ed Damiano, the company founder, has kept everybody up to speed over the years. He has been very public, showing the progress in presentations, at conferences, and he's been on the show a couple of times himself. I will link up those older episodes. For newer listeners, the iLet is meant to be a dual-chambered pump. That means it will hold and infuse insulin and glucagon to help achieve better time in range. Just so we're all clear, putting glucagon into your body isn't like eating sugar or infusing a quick-acting sugar like glucose or dextrose. Very simply put, injecting glucagon or infusing glucagon stimulates the liver to convert its stored glycogen into glucose, which it can then release into the body. The iLet is being designed with 2 cartridges and 2 infusion sets, one each for the insulin and the glucagon. But the plan right now is to move forward with just the insulin. So just one chamber, like a quote, regular insulin pump for now. I know that was a lot, but after Kate and I finished the interview, we realized that a quick description like that and some information about glucagon, because I still explain it. I still have a lot of people who are newer in the community who don't quite understand. So I really hope that helped. Okay, a lot more in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. And we first noticed Dario a couple of years ago at a conference. And Benny thought being able to turn your smartphone into a meter was pretty amazing. I'm excited to tell you that Dario offers even more now. The Dario Diabetes Success Plan gives you all the supplies and support you need to succeed. You'll get a glucometer that fits in your pocket, unlimited test strips and lancets delivered to your door, and a mobile app with a complete view of your data. The plan is tailored for you with coaching when and how you need it and personalized reports based on your activity. Find out more. Go to mydario.com/diabetes-connections. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. Boy, am I excited to talk to you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Before we jump in, my listeners know that I promised this year that in 2021, I was going to be very heavy on technology. There's so much in front of the FDA. There's so much going into pivotal trials and heading to the FDA that I thought it would be so easy to do all of these interviews. But I realized as we got further along that the very timing of all of this makes it very difficult for the companies to actually come on and share a lot of information because you are limited in what you can say, and understandably so. So before we even get started, I know you have a disclaimer that you're probably going to bring out a couple of times during the interview, but why don't you go ahead and say that now?
Thanks, Stacey. So the iLet bionic pancreas is an investigational device, and it's limited by federal or United States law to investigational use, and it is not available for sale.
As we go forward and as you listen, I should also let you know that I've given Kate the opportunity, as I did when I talked to Howard Look from Tidepool or anybody else who is in this phase of their device or technology, the opportunity to kind of let me know when I've crossed the line. So I may ask a question that you can't answer, Kate, but I think we kind of understand where we are. So I appreciate that. All right. Having said that, give us the lay of the land if you can. Where is the iLet in terms of development? Let's go high level as far as we can right now.
Okay. So Beta Bionics is the company behind the iLet. And we're a really different company because we're a certified B Corporation and a public benefit corporation. And that means our company is measured by an independent resource based on how our company's operations and business model impacts our workers, our community, our environment, and our customers. From our supply chain and input materials to our charitable giving and employee benefits, B Corp certification proves our business meets the highest standards of verified performance. For Beta Bionics, that means the people with diabetes and their loved ones have a seat at the table in our decision making. It's in that context that we're working to bring the commercial version of the iLet to market. There is currently a pivotal clinical trial testing the iLet in people living with type 1 diabetes ages 6 and up. This trial is large and involves 17 different clinical trial sites across the United States. Results from this clinical trial will potentially support our application to the FDA for regulatory clearance of the insulin configuration of the device in that population. Once the FDA application is filed, FDA review of 510K market applications typically take about 6 months, which includes 90 days of FDA review time and time for response to questions that may come up during the review.
My understanding is that the iLet is a device. We're talking about an insulin pump here, and I guess what I would call an artificial pancreas or hybrid closed loop system where it communicates with a CGM to help you stay in a certain range. But the iLet has always been talked about as needing minimal input. In other words, last time I talked to Ed, he was talking about you put your weight in, and that's really the only information it needs from the user to get started. Is all of that still the case? Is that what's in these pivotal trials?
Yeah, so the iLet is designed to be initialized by weight alone. It doesn't require users to set carb ratios or basal rates or insulin sensitivity factors. The system uses your weight as a starting point and then learns quickly what your unique responses are based on CGM values it receives every 5 minutes. So with that in mind, we hope that once the FDA clears it, the iLet can be an automated insulin delivery device that requires very few inputs from healthcare providers and people with diabetes or caregivers. For us, this solution isn't just about the features. It's about the benefit that it could potentially give people, reduce cognitive and emotional burden, You might recall Adam Brown has talked about the 42 factors that impact blood glucose at the ADA conference and in his book, Bright Spots and Landmines. Those of us in the community can definitely relate based on our own experiences. There are a number of diverse factors that plague people with diabetes on a whim. Combine that juggling act with up to 180 diabetes-related decisions that people with diabetes or their caregivers make each day, and we really do have a cognitive and emotional workload that those living without diabetes don't face. So our hope is that the iLet, if cleared, may reduce that burden since it's offering a solution to type 1 diabetes management without the same numerical input as traditional insulin therapy.
Can you speak to the idea of just entering weight and like announcing meals? I mean, I think for those of us, my son's used an insulin pump since he was 2. So we're coming up on almost 15 years of using an insulin pump. And the idea of interacting with it less is a little bit mind-boggling. You're a mom of a person with type 1. You have a child with type 1 diabetes. Can you just speak to that idea? You've already talked about the burden being lifted a little bit, but is it difficult for people to kind of wrap their brains around and the reaction of when it does work as well as we assume?
I can't speak about the clinical trial right now or the results that we're getting, but what I can tell you as a mom of a child with diabetes is that the cognitive and emotional burden that she feels just having to constantly worry about her diabetes is immense. And I think that we, even as parents, don't fully understand, how much our kids have to think about diabetes, how much it impacts every moment of every day, even interacting with friends or going out or making decisions on whether or not they're going to sleep over at a friend. And if there was a device that could potentially relieve some of that burden, to me, that's huge. That would be amazing for my daughter. So with the iLet, when you're entering a meal, you would select whether the meal is the usual amount of carbs for you, more or less. It's designed not to require you to count the actual number of carbs. Over time, the system's designed to learn what that means to you personally. So for my daughter, for example, might have a totally different usual meal than your son. So the system is designed to learn and adapt to each individual user. While there's, that's the practical application, there are other considerations for why the iLet has been designed that way. There are thousands of Americans who don't have access to an endocrinologist. We want to engage them. We want to meet them where they are and help them get closer to their diabetes goals. I feel passionately about improving the lives of people living with diabetes and easing the burden they live with every day. And research has documented racial and ethnic disparities in diabetes treatments and outcomes. Technology uptake, for example, is much higher for white youth than Black or Hispanic youth. As a public benefit corporation, our goal is to get our solutions to as many people as possible. So we're actively exploring how we can reach the underserved populations and hope to be able to provide all people with diabetes the same level of care.
I want to make a note and come back to that because there's been such a wonderful, I don't know how to say it. I want to make a note and come back to that because years ago we talked about the DIY community, how it was reaching so few people. It was such a great benefit, but really not for a lot of people. And so many of you are passionate and wanted to bring this, commercial product out. And now it's being done. So I want to follow up on that in just a little bit if I could, but let's continue to kind of talk about where we are. Thank you. But the idea of no carb counting to me would be such a relief because one of the shocking things that happened in my brain was within the first year of Benny being diagnosed. Again, he was 2. He wasn't eating as much food as he does now at 16. But we realized that carb counting was so inexact and such guesswork because you could try to be as exact as possible at home, but then you would go to a restaurant and you really had no idea. And as you listen, my husband owned and operated a restaurant for many years. So you can tell somebody this dish has this many carbs in it. But first of all, restaurants put so much more butter and fat and seasonings and things in your food because that's what makes it taste so delicious at the restaurant, which affects how it breaks down in your body. But also, one person can make it to the next day, even at a fast food restaurant. It's not going to be exactly the same. So what was the thinking behind it? Is it really just to make it easier on people, or did the researchers and the founders here also kind of think that carb counting really isn't that exact? Right back to Kate answering that question. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Gvoke HypoPen. And you know low blood sugar feels horrible. You can get shaky and sweaty or even feel like you're going to pass out. There are lots of symptoms, and they can be different for everyone. I'm so glad we have a different option to treat very low blood sugar. Gvoke HypoPen. It's the first auto-injector to treat very low blood sugar. Gvoke HypoPen is pre-mixed and ready to go with no visible needle. Before Gvoke, people needed to go through a lot of steps to get glucagon treatments ready to be used. This made emergency situations even more challenging and stressful. This is so much better. I am grateful we have it on hand. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Gvoke logo. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Now back to Kate, answering my question about the inexact science of counting carbs.
Yeah, carb counting is not very accurate. People are notoriously bad at carb counting. My daughter might look at her meal and see 15 carbs. Another person with diabetes might count those carbs completely differently. It's really helpful to be able to look at your plate and say, this is usual for me, or this is more for me. This breakfast is way more than I would typically eat, so I'm going to let the system know about that, rather than counting the exact numbers in that restaurant meal.
I could talk about that for an hour. That to me is so revolutionary. Benny, the other day, we got these big cookies, which is, a real treat. We don't eat a ton of junk food, but we don't eat super low carb either. But there were these giant chocolate chip cookies, and he was higher than usual later. And I just asked him, I'm like, hey, I'm just curious, because I don't look at everything he eats or talk to him about every bolus anymore. I said, what did you think those cookies were? And he said, I think I put in 35. I was like, dude, those were like 65. Easy. Right? And he was like, what? He's had diabetes for 14 and a half years, right? It doesn't mean he's a bad person. He just took a guess.
Yeah, exactly. We have the same with my daughter. I don't manage her diabetes, as actively as I used to when she was little, but occasionally I'll ask her, how many carbs did you think were in that? And then we'll compare it to the package. One really big example that we have those flat pretzels. And they're in a big container, and she'll just pour herself a bowl. And, she guesses on how many carbs are in that bowl. But one time we actually put it on the scale and calculated, and she was 45 carbs off, like consistently. So she had been doing this for some time. And I know the same thing happens with cereal, for example. Once we move past that carrying a scale with us phase, our eyeballs are the judges, and they're not very good sometimes.
Yeah. I think some people listening might be saying, well, why don't you carry scales with you anymore? What kind of parents are you? But I got to say, I'm not into adding any more diabetes burden than we need to. So I'm thrilled with letting technology replace my brain on this. Control IQ has done a wonderful job for us in really helping. And, what you're talking about is only going to help as well. So the big question with the iLet has always been about the dual chambered pump. This was a pump that years ago was talked about, and I know you're still working toward a dual chambered pump with insulin and with glucagon in it. But my understanding is that what we're talking about today, what the pivotal trials are all about, is insulin only. Can you talk a little bit, just kind of give the listeners an update on what we're talking about in terms of the one chambered pump and what you're working toward with the dual chambered pump?
So the iLet's designed with two chambers, one for an insulin cartridge and the other for a glucagon cartridge. Our initial device after FDA clearance will have the insulin chamber available to users, while the glucagon chamber will not be usable. Once the dual hormone configuration has been also cleared through the FDA through a subsequent 510(k) application, the glucagon chamber will also be made available to users. Our hope is that it would be the same device, just the second chamber would then become available.
I understand you may not be able to answer this, but if and when it becomes a dual chambered pump, the hardware, as you say, would be the same. Is it just a question of software updates, or is that looking too far in the future?
It is my understanding that it will be a software update. but we definitely are getting ahead of ourselves there. We have to go through the whole FDA and 510K application for that configuration.
Got it. Okay. I'll tread lightly. I'll be careful on that.
Thank you.
Of course. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to the folks at Zegalogue, which I'm still not sure I'm saying correctly, which is the glucagon that I believe you all are working with. Is that still the case?
Yes. Yes. So we are working with Zealand to provide the glucagon that will be used in the clinical trial for the bihormonal device. And they recently got approval for dasiglucagon for the treatment of severe hypoglycemia, and they're marketing it under the brand name Zegalogue. I hope I am saying that correctly as well.
I think we're good. I guess my only question on that, because I know it's a separate company, but it was so many years that we were waiting, not just for the iLet, but we were waiting for that shelf-stable glucagon so we didn't have to, in emergencies or for low treatment, reconstitute or kind of open that red box or that orange emergency box. So it was a big relief in many ways when the different types of shelf-stable glucagon were approved. I mean, there's 3 options now. I know you can't speak in detail about a lot of this, but I got a question from a listener about how this would work. And the question wasn't so much about the mechanisms or the software. I know that's proprietary. But the question was, it's always risky to use glucagon too much, right? It's also why we don't want to have too many lows in a row that your liver has to help out with, because you can deplete the glucagon supply. And I'm curious, this listener wanted to know, is there any danger of depleting the body's own sources if you're always giving it from an external glucagon injection or infusion?
So we're deeply aware of the risks of severe hypoglycemia. Until we know more from a pivotal trial, it would be best to ask that question to an MD with expertise in glucagon storage and depletion. But what I can tell you is that we're partnering with Zealand to provide the glucagon that will be used in the clinical trial for our bihormonal device. As you know, they recently got approval for Zegalogue, and we plan to use that same shelf-stable, ready-to-use glucagon with the iLet in our bihormonal pivotal trials. It's really important to note, though, that the amount of glucagon that will be dispensed in the iLet will be substantially lower than the amount dispensed in the Zegalogue injection or prefilled pen. That's because the latter is for severe hypo rescue, and the amount the iLet would dispense is intended to be hypoglycemia prevention. So the iLet is designed to microdose very small amounts of glucagon as needed based on the person with diabetes CGM readings and the speed of their glucose decline. So it's really important for people to know that they wouldn't be getting a rescue dose of glucagon in that scenario. Of course, the use of dasiglucagon with the iLet will need additional FDA approval for dasiglucagon, and the iLet will also need FDA clearance for dispensing dasiglucagon.
I mentioned earlier that the system, and you mentioned this as well, is working with a CGM. And my understanding is that this is Dexcom G6?
That's correct. The iLet is designed to work with the Dexcom CGM, but we're open to working with other CGM manufacturers in the future because we understand that choice is really important to people living with diabetes.
That's great. Dexcom G7 is moving forward. I assume that as that moves forward, the iLet will move forward with it?
I would think that's a fairly safe assumption.
Okay, good answer. Can you tell me any details? And again, I feel like I'm fishing here, but can you tell me any details about the pump itself? We've got Omnipod, which has the remote PDM that is used with it. We have Tandem, which has buttons on the pump, and they're hoping to get bolus by phone pretty soon. Is the iLet buttons on the pump? Is it a phone control? Anything you can tell me about that?
Yeah, so everything currently is designed to be done from the iLet itself. It has a touchscreen interface, and the infusion sets at launch will be similar to the insets that people are familiar with. John Kostick and our team are working on some of the potential mobile solutions for the iLet, and we hope to have more information about those as we get closer to launch.
I know that you have had a lot of input from the community because I've seen the posts that you all have put out there asking for help from the community in terms of, I guess, what is called human factors and things like that. Can you share a little bit about anything that you've learned just anecdotally about what people like and don't like about using an insulin pump, or what any kind of feedback that you got along the way that might be of interest?
Unfortunately, I can't share that information. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the fact that we have a lot of preclinical data that's available on our website. So if anybody is interested in looking at that, it's betabionics.com. And I can't comment on the results of our pivotal trial as it's still in progress. We do hope to have those results later this year and look forward to sharing them. Our goal, backed by appropriate research and continuously advancing technology, is to create a solution that people with diabetes don't have to spend so much time micromanaging decisions that impact their condition, and that they can spend more time focusing on other things in their lives.
This is another question from a listener, and this is about changing the reservoirs out. And this would be when it is dual chambered. So do you have to change them together, or can you change out the one that is empty? And I'll add to that, again, knowing it, I don't know if you can answer, that, right now we are all told to change out an insulin cartridge within 3 days. Do you have to change the glucagon in a period of time as well?
So as designed, the insulin cartridge used with the iLet can be changed actually independently of the infusion set. So you could change your insulin cartridge, but not your infusion set. And we intend to have pre-filled cartridges and user-filled cartridges available if FDA cleared. As for the glucagon, that's one of the things we hope to uncover during the bihormonal pivotal trial, is the duration that people can leave the dasiglucagon cartridge in the device and how often it needs to be changed.
I didn't ask about infusion sets, and I'm not a big fan of any of them on the market. I think that's the weak link of pumping. I'm not alone in that assessment. 2 questions there. So when it is dual chambered, do you anticipate 2 infusion lines and 2 infusion sets? I assume you're not mixing these 2 together, right?
Yes, we anticipate using 2 infusion sets.
And then the other question is, can you share what you're using? Is there a new one coming from Beta Bionics, or are you planning to use one that's already on the market?
For our pivotal trials, we're using ones that are very similar to insets that are currently available from Uno Medical, and that is what we plan to use at launch.
A couple other just kind of lifestyle questions, I guess, about the pump. How is it charged? Is it a battery? Is it external? How do you charge the pump?
So the iLet's designed for inductive charging, like modern mobile phones. So no cords or cables are required to charge it. The battery is designed to typically last about 5 days on a single charge, and a full charge takes about 2 hours.
So wait, I think that went by too quickly for my brain.
Okay.
You mean you lay it on a charger? You don't plug it in?
Correct.
Do I have to get a special charger, or can you use anything like you said a cell phone charger? I mean, I know I don't use one of those, which is why you hear me stammering around. I'm thinking, do I get one on Amazon? Do you buy it at this? These are easily available for regular people.
Our hope is to ship you a charger with the device, but that it would also work with another charger of similar design that you might have around your house.
Okay. And I probably sounded so old-fashioned to everybody listening, but, what are you going to do? And talk to me a little bit about the pump. Is it waterproof? Can it get wet?
It is designed to be waterproof, yes.
So wait, now I have to ask. So you can swim with it. It's not just waterproof to a certain amount.
So you remember those Animas bubbling water displays that they used to have when they had their pumps floating in the water? So their devices were certified to the same level that the iLet, we hope that the iLet will be certified to as well.
Very cool. Anybody have those old Animas displays? You guys could grab those. I think I was at a display once they had fish swimming in the water once.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it was explained to me by one of our engineers, was the old Animas pump was the same way, and they had the bubbler with the fish in it.
I think I have a photo because, I used to work with Animas, and I'm pretty sure I spoke at an event where they had these centerpieces at a table, and it was a fish tank and the pumps were in it. I'll have to search that up. Oh, that's great. let me ask you, I'm sure that my listeners will have many more questions about the iLet, and hopefully we can speak again. We'll get more information as it moves forward. But you and I have known each other for a long time in the community as fellow diabetes parents. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions about how you're doing? Your daughter was diagnosed when she was, 8, 9 years old?
That's right. Sydney was diagnosed when she was 8, and she just turned 18.
Wow.
So she is now an adult.
Oh, my gosh. How is she doing? I mean, we've already talked about her a little bit, but it sounds like me, you have backed off quite a bit of the diabetes parenting, although we never really back off.
Yeah, so she's doing great. She's finishing high school, and she has been accepted to university in September, and she will be living in residence. So we are preparing for her moving out of the house in late August.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. I'm curious now, I don't want to get too far off the topic here, but I'm curious, did you all as a family do anything special in terms of college prep? I have a plan in mind. I don't know if I'll do it where, like Benny's second half of his senior year of high school, I really just want to leave him alone completely, like stop following him, be here if he really needs me, but I don't know. Did you do anything like that?
So we have been slowly transitioning and backing off as sort of naturally as the year has progressed. So she takes care of all of her diabetes management, site changes, all of those things without being reminded by me, which is fantastic. I have started transitioning to her ordering supplies. So I've taught her how to, it's just a log into a website and you click what you need and they check our insurance. It's not very complicated, but I have walked her through how to do that so that she has a bit more comfort with it. We are really worried about overnight because she currently does not wake up for low blood sugars. So we've been sort of thinking through how we can do that. And over the summer, we will be backing off that and finding ways to get her to wake up to her low blood sugar alarms and try and manage those overnight, because that is my biggest concern about her moving away.
When you and I first spoke, it was the summer of 2015. It was the first year of this podcast, and we were talking about Nightscout. I can probably dig up the pictures. I had this giant setup that I schlepped to Friends for Life that I don't use on the road anymore. When we're back on the road, I'm really excited to see people again. But we talked at the time about the Nightscout project and about your help to so many people in designing the Pebble watch face, helping people set that up. I'm curious, as you look back, I mean, a lot of people from the do-it-yourself community, you already mentioned John Kostick and many others, are now working in the commercial space to bring, we mentioned this towards the beginning, to bring what was better technology, better care that was really only to a very, very small percentage of people to the larger community. Can you speak to that for a minute? It's amazing to me to see how far everything has come.
I started out with a real passion for helping people living with diabetes and trying to get, all of the technology to them. And the problem is that we reach a certain wall with the people that we can reach online. We're sort of in this echo chamber of the same people all the time. And what we've discovered is that technology uptake is much higher in certain populations. I recently did a study and we're finding that people who are Caucasian or higher income are much more likely to be using these tools than the people of color and their counterparts. So working for companies like Beta Bionics give us the opportunity to reach a much wider group of people and really gives us the opportunity, because we are a public benefit company, to try and engage those people that aren't being engaged currently with the tools that are available.
When you look back at your time in the DIY community, what stands out to you? It was such a buzzy, busy time between 2013 and 2016 or even 2017. But as commercial offerings have frankly gotten better, I know a lot of people still use the DIY stuff, but it seems like there was an energy and there was really, a time not too long ago where folks like you were, I got to imagine your phone was buzzing all the time with people asking for help. What was all that like?
Yeah, it was a crazy time. And, to a certain extent, those communities are still really active. The Looped community, which I run, has 27,000 people in it. So there's still a lot of activity surrounding these things. But I think as the commercial solutions come around, we're able to provide solutions for so many more people that sort of aggressive need dies down from a little bit from the DIY community, because a greater number of people without maybe the same technical expertise are able to find solutions with the commercial offering. So I always said I would keep doing that volunteer job until a commercial offering was able to put me out of business, because ideally, I hope that commercial solutions like the iLet will be able to serve the diabetes community so that we don't have to look to DIY solutions anymore.
I always hate asking this question because I know there's probably not going to be an answer at the end of it. But what is the hoped for timeline here? Can you tell us anything about the submission or things like that? I love the silence. That's okay. I have to ask.
Yeah. So as I said, once the clinical trial is completed, then we will submit for FDA regulatory clearance of the insulin-only configuration. Once the FDA application is filed, there will be an FDA review of the 510K market applications. Those typically take 6 months. And then we will have a launch date once that has all been completed.
This might be an odd question, but as we start to wrap it up here, when we go to conferences like Friends for Life over the last several years, and Ed Damiano speaks about the product and the process and everything, anything that has to do with Beta Bionics and the iLet is so closely watched. It has just become, I guess the way to say it is, you guys have a lot of fans out there in the community. I mean, it might be a small portion of the entire diabetes world, but this is a really passionate group of people kind of waiting for this. Do you, as you talk to each other, do you feel the pressure of that? Is that exciting to you? I just would imagine, and I can't answer this for you, but going to work there must be amazing every day to know that people are so excited about the product.
It is absolutely amazing. We definitely feel the community spirit and presence and pressure to deliver. Every day we talk about the fact that, we want to help the people living with diabetes who have been waiting for us, and we don't want to make them wait any longer than they have to. And, the process has taken longer than we hoped it would. So we're definitely committed to the people with diabetes that we're trying to help. And we have the most passionate team working on this. Everybody is so committed. And we have so many people who are touched by type 1 diabetes, either living with type 1 diabetes or parents of children with type 1 diabetes or children of parents with type 1 diabetes. We're part of the community. We really feel passionately about this. So we cannot wait to have this device ready for those people.
Kate, thank you so much for joining me and for being patient with my questions. I know, as I said, you're limited in what you can say, but I cannot tell you how much I appreciate Beta Bionics making you accessible and coming on to share this. And thanks for all your hard work. I cannot wait to learn more. I know you can't wait to tell us more. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
More information at diabetes-connections.com or, of course, in the show notes. You can always go to the homepage, though, to get the full notes and the transcription of every episode. And there's a lot there. As Kate alluded to, there are some other studies. There's some more information, and it's all at Beta Bionics. So I will link that up, in addition to the interviews we've done in the past with Ed Damiano. And I'm going to link up the first interview I did with Kate back in 2015, because looking back, that made me laugh. And this has nothing to do with Beta Bionics or the pump or technology, or it's my technology. So I use very light technology. This is just a little bit of inside baseball now on the podcast. When I travel, and I'm going to be traveling again to conventions this year, which is so exciting, I have a small kind of a studio in your pocket. It's a Zoom H5 recorder, and I use a couple of ATR 2100s if you're into that kind of microphone technology. Very light stuff. I don't even need to plug it into a computer. The H5 is its own little studio. But when I interviewed Kate, and I interviewed a bunch of people at that first Friends for Life that I went to as a podcaster, I brought my Yeti. The Yeti microphone is a brick. It's not that great a microphone, actually. Don't get me started. But it's a brick, and it's so heavy. And I brought like a mini studio. I had this paneling set up. Oh my gosh. I had so many things to check when I got on the airplane. And then I was schlepping it around the hotel at Friends for Life, which is not the most compact hotel. It's a lot of walking. So I'll see if I can dig up some pictures. But Kate was very patient with me, as was everybody I talked to that day. Just funny how things do change over 6 years. All right, we've got some Tell Me Something Good coming up with some fantastic anniversaries, not about the podcast. Some listeners who are celebrating very long time diaversaries and are doing great. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And one of the most common questions I get is how to help kids become more independent. You know, those transitional times are pretty tricky. Elementary to middle to high school, you know what I mean. Using the Dexcom makes a big difference for us. It's not all about share and follow, although that's helpful. Think about how much easier it is for a middle schooler to just look at their Dexcom rather than do 4 to 5 finger sticks at school. Or for a second grader to just show their care team their number before gym. At one point, Benny was up to 10 finger sticks a day, and not having to do that makes his management a lot easier for him. It's also a lot easier to spot the trends and use the technology to give your kids more independence. Find out more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. In Tell Me Something Good this week, big diaversaries. Terry Lopes is celebrating 50 years of type 1 diabetes. She was diagnosed at the age of 9, and she made a really nice Facebook post where she talks about being grateful to the people in her life who helped her and looked out for her early on. Parents, siblings, friends, teachers, camp counselors, nurses, doctors, she says, and thankful for those who still look out for me and for the technology that helps me have better control and live much more freely, and also makes it so that no one needs to be told they may only live to the age of 40 when diagnosed as a young child. Terry, thank you so much for sharing this. She also posted that her dad turned 90 recently as well, so happy birthday to him. My goodness. But it really is hard to imagine, and I know I'm so grateful to know many people who have lived with type 1 for 40, 50, even 60, 70 years. I mean, it's amazing that, I don't know them personally, but we've been connected online. And they were all told as children, that they would not live a long and healthy life. Our kids are not told that anymore. And I'm so grateful for that. Terry, I'm thrilled that you're in the group. And thank you so much for sharing that. Yerachmiel Altman shared a different kind of diaversary. He posted that he has been using an insulin pump for 40 years, 40. He has got to be one of the first people to use an insulin pump. And we've had him on the show. I know he helped design insulin pumps. I mean, my goodness, what a life. And he always posts, we're so thankful for this, the old technology. So if you're in the Facebook group, Diabetes Connections, the group, I'll make sure to repost this. But I mean, the first insulin pump was basically like a syringe taped to what looks like a big pager. And it just stabbed you with the needle and gave you the insulin. I don't know. It doesn't look like something that would work. It looks like something Benny would have slapped together from spare diabetes parts when he was in second grade. God bless the people who used this and tested everything and made it so, like I just said, so that our kids and adults diagnosed today can live long and healthy lives. 40 years with an insulin pump. Yerachmiel, thank you for sharing that. And I love sharing the good news. If you've got something, tell me about it. Stacey at diabetes-connections.com or post in the Facebook group. I love to hear it. Before I let you go, quick reminder about In the News, my new feature every Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, live on Facebook. I hope you can join me for that. I'm working on some different tech to kind of see if I can make it look a little bit more TV newsy. That's been really fun. I got a green screen and oh my gosh. I started out in television and then I went to radio and then I went to podcasting and now it's like back in TV reporting. It's bonkers. But I'm also, as you know, if you're a regular podcast listener, I'm putting out those In the News episodes every Friday as well. So if you miss it live or you just want to hear the audio, I definitely want you to have options. I like doing this a lot. It's been really fun. I'm trying to keep them short. So if you like it or you don't, you've got any constructive criticism, any kind of criticism I can take, but come on, be nice. Please, please, please let me know. I also announced on social media that I have taken a new position. I am working with the fabulous folks at She Podcasts. I'm selling sponsorships for She Podcasts Live, which is coming up in October of this year. I'm going to do Friends for Life in New York in the beginning of October. And then I'm going to She Podcasts Live in the middle of October in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's going to be a busy month. I also have a big birthday in that month. So we're looking forward to October. It's going to be great. But if you are at all involved in podcasting and you're a woman, please check out She Podcasts. I'll put a link. If you are interested in reaching thousands of women who podcast, you don't have to be a technology company, but if you want to reach women who are movers and shakers, let me know because I can hook you up. That's my new gig. I'm still going to be doing the podcast, of course, and all my other projects. This is perfect because I get to meet some new people and do some fun stuff, but I don't have to give up anything, but maybe some sleep. I don't know when I'm going to get all this done. All right. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. 6 years. Oh, my gosh. I'm Stacey Simms. I'll see you back here in just a couple of days. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.